Okay, so we are looking at, we got our day 3 here, which we're going to cover PowerPoint 4. This will be chapter 4 of your NASM BCS manual. So yesterday, we kind of got like, it's a kind of a weird rhythm in the beginning of this class. We go into like a big intro day, and then like, we're like, here's what you need to do to be an effective assessor and screening and stuff. And it's like, it's going to help you with these tools, and they don't give you any tools yet. So today is we're starting like adding tools to the tool belt, right? So we're going to look at goal setting as a way to enhance like behavior change for our clients, right? We just know that setting effective goals is a really big part of achieving success. There's a lot of different types of goals. Generally, people tend to focus on oftentimes the wrong types of goals, or they'll make goals that are just not very specific, and that leaves a lot of wiggle room, and that wiggle room is really kind of what kills you sometimes, and so that's sort of what we're looking at. We're looking at sort of how to help our clients. Like we want to be experts on goal setting so that we can help our clients, we can help coach our clients through processing and making those really effective goals. So, and we're going to say the word goal a lot today. So goal, what that is, it's something that an individual is trying to accomplish, right? The object or aim of like a specific action. And we want to make sure that our goals are objectively measured. Am I going to sneeze again today? What? I am becoming my father. Goals are objectively measured, right? That's really what we're looking for here. So I love subjective this and that. Actually, just to give you a classic example of like subjectiveness, if you were to measure the greatest NFL team, it would be the Seattle Seahawks. I'm only saying that because I see a Rams. See, that's very much like an opinion. You can't like measure something like that, right? Unless you were to look at like statistics, in which case it would be the freaking Patriots, which everyone gets to hate, except for Patriots fans. So objective, right? When we say like we want to make sure that our goals are objectively measured, we want to pick goals that we can like, usually put like a number on, or at least like measure in terms of accomplishment. Even if you can't necessarily put like a number on it, like even if you can't be like, I'm 26% of the way to my goal, like that's super objective. But like, even if you can't do something like that, just in terms of like, are you making progress? Yes. Or are you not making progress? No. And making sure that that's very clear, yes or no. That's still technically objective because it's a 1 or a 0, right? It's a yes or a no. Binary if for any of the super nerds out there. So that's kind of what we're looking at when we mean that we want our goals to be objective. You don't have to always pick number-based goals, but you do want to pick goals that are objectively measured rather than subjectively, right? Like if somebody said they wanted to be rich, whoops, sorry buddy, I stepped on your tail. If somebody said they wanted to be rich, that's not a very objective goal, right? Like that's not I mean, it's fine. Like I'm not saying that goal is bad or something they shouldn't want to achieve, but I am saying that like if that's their only goal and that's how they like see it in their head, that's not a very good thing to measure. It's going to be very, very difficult to tell when you're done because like you haven't really clearly defined it. But if you said you wanted to be a millionaire, right? Like that is something that you can measure because it's like, exactly when you're making progress towards it, right? Like, do I have $1 million? Yes or no, right? Or am I worth $1 million? Yes or no, right? That's objective measurement, right? Do I have more today than I did last month? That's objectively measured. So that's really something that we're looking at. It's attaining a very specific, and sometimes it can be attaining a specific level of proficiency on like a specific task. That's another version of really good goals, right? Goals that you want to achieve that are just, I want to develop my skills in this, right? So maybe I want to be able to do 50 push-ups in a row, uninterrupted in under 75 seconds, right? That's great. Like that's a really like measurable goal, First, you can very much tell like when you can do uh, X number of push-ups. Sorry, that was very distracting. Get out of here. Um, and you can measure how long it takes you to do a certain number of push-ups. Like you can definitely tell when you're making progress towards that. I've been trying to do something. I set myself a goal this month. And I've only got one more workout to get it done. I got to get it done tomorrow, actually. And if I don't, then I will have not met my freaking goal. But I am trying to do a 30-second descent on a pull-up. So you do a pull-up and then you lower yourself down for 30 seconds before your arms lock out. And I'm at 24 as of yesterday's workout. And I was like, frick, I was hoping to be done. I wanted like a buffer one. My goal is by tomorrow's workout. My goal is by Friday, the 28th. But I was hoping yesterday's lifting day would be like the day that I was like somewhat going to achieve, like I'd be like have a little buffer room. So hopefully like I'm gonna take a little I'm gonna get real amped up before my workout tomorrow and play some music and probably have an extra cup of coffee or something to give me a little bit of extra energy, and then see if I can actually freaking meet that tomorrow. But that's something that is quantitatively measured, right? Like that's something that is easily measured in like a very specific number-based thing, but it's also something that I can measure progress towards, right? Even if it's just as simple as like, did that feel good? Did are my hands like struggling with the grip, or am I feeling it under my lats? Like I can still measure some of that progress, even though it may not necessarily be number-based. So the other really good thing here, and this is arguably the most important before we start going into our types of goals, is that your goal should be based on facts, not opinions. This kind of goes back to being objective versus subjective again. Like, don't get me wrong, it's not that you're, in the goal setting world, yeah, you kind of want to avoid opinionated goals. In the goal setting world, you really do kind of want to, create fact-based goals. Not saying that opinions are bad. I've got wacky opinions that I think would be better. But like, and some people like totally disagree with me. That's totally fine, but like the information, like the data, that's like something that we want to have be very, very clear when it comes to goal-based, right? So you want to make sure that your goals are like based on something that is considered like healthy, for instance. Like we know that like if your body fat percentage gets too low and your body weight is also really low, like there are certain health risks associated with that. So if you're creating a goal based on being like, well, I think I would look better that way, and it's like, yeah, but like statistically, like that is very dangerous and unhealthy, right? Like that's not the type of goal that we really want to set. Or if your goal is something like, well, I want to be the best at something, it's like that it's okay. I mean, like that's a great goal. Like, I mean, it's motivating. Like we all do want to be the best, but like it's very hard to measure something that is the best, and you don't really have a lot of control over anybody else's actions. So that sometimes can also be challenging, at least in our industry, Now, if you're a freaking Olympic sprinter, yeah, your goal should be to win. Your goal should be to be the greatest sprinter in the world, But that's such a small like subset. What tends to work best in our industry is focusing on particularly these two types of goals right here. So looking at our types of goals, right? One of them that I just described is what's called an outcome goal. And outcome goals are goals that are related to winning or losing. These are typically goals that have some type of like opponent, right? For instance, like an outcome goal might be something like coming in first at the Boston Marathon, or run a mile faster than my gym partner, right? Both those are good examples of outcome goals, which again, I don't dislike those. If you're an athlete, like that's a very specific subset of the population. If you want to create a goal like that, go for it. And if my job is to like coach you to be the best on, like on the field, okay, great. Yeah, we're going to create like some outcome goals. But outcome goals can have kind of a fatal drawback, which is you don't have any control over someone else's performance. So even if you do your best work and like you nailed it, I mean, you absolutely crushed it, but somebody else just happened to be training at elevation or something, and they get some type of like advantage over you, and then suddenly you don't win some type of event. I mean, hopefully what we want to be like well adjusted is we want to go, okay, I didn't get it. That's okay. Reset that goal and I'm going to get on the next one. And you're going to stay positive. If that's the case, make as many outcome goals as you want. But generally what we're going to see oftentimes is outcome goals sometimes lead to frustration because you don't have control over someone else's actions. So that's something that we see. Raul, did you have a question, by the way? Or am I just crazy? I keep seeing, I saw your mic on.
No, I don't think I pressed nothing.
Oh, really? Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, that's fine. So those are your outcome goals. You've also got performance goals, okay? So performance goals are goals that are related to personal achievement. Now, these are goals that we tend to put a little more emphasis on as in our industry, right? It's related to like you being your best version of yourself, right? Rather than you being the best version of anybody else on the field. And so performance goals, right? The end product is usually like performance, some type of personal achievement. A good example of this is achieving your best running time at the Boston Marathon. So you don't necessarily need to come in first, but you do want to do better than you have ever done before. That's awesome. We have a ton of control over that, right? Because we know exactly where we were in the past and we know exactly where we want to get to in the future. I love performance-based goals. I especially love always saying this one phrase where I'm like, your future self is going to thank you. Like you're going to look back and be like, man, I was so much slower than I am now. Or your future self is going to go, oh, man, like that looked like such a long road. And honestly, it wasn't that difficult. Look, I'm here now, you know? I love performance-based goals. I love to use them as a motivating factor during workouts. I love to do them as like an activity when I sit down with my clients. So big fan of performance-based goals. And then we also have process-based goals. Process goals are really good as well. These are a little bit, they're very similar to performance goals, but instead they're based on just getting better at an overall process rather than necessarily doing your best version of something. And so like the process is you want to engage in is performed in a satisfactory manner, right? You are competent at a skill. You can develop mastery later, but for now, we can just focus on getting better at the process, right? So this might be to keep a consistent pace at the Boston Marathon, or I train for my running consistently 4 weeks in a row without missing a session, right? That's a great example of like a process goal, right? So like if you had the goal to be like, I'm gonna check into the gym 25 times this month, right? That's a ton, right? Like that's great. That's consistent check-ins, right? You're only missing 5 days out of a month, which actually arguably 24 would probably be better. Just because that'd be like 5 to 6 days in. But yeah, that'd be a really great like utilization of like how much you're spending on your gym membership. It'd be a really good utilization of you taking control of your health, right? Like all of that. That's a really good example of like a process goal. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to like be able to lift any more weight on day 1 than you did in day 2 or day 30 weight, right? You just need to have like gotten better at showing up to the gym consistently. So we really like both of these. Both performance and process goals tend to be the ones that we spend a little more time focusing on. And so goals have been shown to be actually more effective. I forgot, this is actually sort of pivoting. The one thing about having these notes set up ahead of time, I forget when I have my pivots. So we definitely want to focus more on performance and process goals just because we have much more control over them. And so it's easier for us to know when we've achieved them and when we're making progress towards them, which is also key because like if your client can't tell that they're making progress towards their goal, you know, like you could have like a long 6-month, 1-year goal, you know, like that's a long time, right? If you're not making progress towards that goal, that can sometimes feel really stagnant and you might not feel as confident, and then all of a sudden you lose motivation, right? So we want to make sure that we typically tend to focus on these two because it's easy for us to see that progress. Now, speaking of seeing progress, we do want to see progress as often as we can, but we also want to make sure that our goals are challenging. There is something special about challenging goals. Goals that have actually been shown to be more effective when the goal is challenging. They lead to higher levels of performance. One of my favorite chapters in Smarter, Better, Faster. One of my favorite chapters talks about stretch goals. So they did this like chapter. We're about to launch into how amazing SMART goals are. We're just about to. I just finished this book, and so it's like perfect that we're talking about this today. But we're about to launch in and talk about the SMART system and how specific and measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-oriented goals are always going to be really effective. And GE, the General Electric, they took goal setting super seriously and like hired all these gurus to come in and like teach their entire staff how to goal set. And then it became part of like the company's requirements. Every manager had to go through goal setting training, and they all had to like learn how to implement it within their departments, the entire company, right? And it was amazing. Like their productivity shot through the roof, and everybody thought they were nuts. They spent so much money on like learning how to do this, and like it took time and effort, and yet their productivity soared. But there was like at one point these two specific departments that were kind of like lagging behind, and they were like, why? What's going on there? And they went and they interviewed them. They were trying to figure out like what's going on. They're like, hey, you guys doing the goal setting? And they're like, yeah, we're doing it all the time. And like there was one secretary at like the front desk in particular that kind of was like the moment that kind of like clicked, and they figured out what was going on. And they're like, hey, we wanted to ask you, like, are you using the goal setting method? And she's like, yeah, I love it. I feel so accomplished and amazing. And what they found is like, she's like, in fact, actually, I love it so much. Sometimes like I'll do something and then I'll sit down and I'll write out my very specific goal related to it so that I can cross it off my list. So it's like she already did something that was like relatively accomplishable or relatively easy, right? And then checked it off her list because it led to her having, led to a little endorphins, which we love checklists, like that like sense of accomplishment you get. And so like that was really great, but it took time to like sit down because like these goals were scrutinized. They would, take them up to a manager who had higher levels of training, and they'd say, this is great, but it's not measurable. Like they would like send them back and they'd work on them and stuff. And they found that like when some people they write like simple goals that are too easy and still spend a ton of time working on those goals, it actually kind of holds down their productivity in the end. And that's what they kind of discovered was going on in these two sections. So then they started focusing on a different concept called stretch goals. And stretch goals are not something that we're actually going to talk too much about here. They're not going to use that term, but we are going to talk about creating challenging goals. And so stretch goals are goals that seem impossible. Like they're just like these amazingly difficult goals, but we find that like it creates this healthy obsession that we develop. And I know obsession gets like a bad rap, but this is like the good kind, right? You develop this obsession with meeting this really large, like obsessive goal. Like I want to buy a $500,000 house. I have no money in savings and I want to do it in 3 years. Like, that's a friggin' stretch goal. Like you got to get enough, like $500,000. That's $100,000 down payment. You have nothing in savings now. You need to have $100,000 in savings in 3 years from zero. That is a stretch goal, but not impossible, right? It can definitely be done. If you start to like have this obsession, maybe you start taking little, TaskRabbit jobs on the weekends and DoorDash jobs. You start doing all of this like side hustling because you develop this healthy obsession, right? With meeting this goal. And so we know that challenging goals have been shown to lead to higher levels of performance. People, you'd be shocked at what you're capable of, right? Is kind of what the message is here. So this is why, and we're going to see this in a little bit, but generally stretch goals tend to be like long-term goals. And then you have like short-term goals. And if you have a combination of the two, you're hitting, these different aspects of your brain. You're hitting your ability to like, do the impossible, and you're hitting the accomplishable so that you feel accomplishable. And that only feeds into, you feeling like you can do the impossible. So goal setting combined with self-monitoring has also been shown to be a very effective method for yielding super positive results. And so what we're talking about here is that like when you're also writing your goals down and you are measuring them and reevaluating them often, that is also going to lead to higher performance, right? And so that pairs really, really well as well. Like one of the best ones that we see in terms of like dietary habits is like when you create like a weight loss or a weight gain or just a health goal, right? And you pair that with like continually checking your food logs, that has been shown to lead to much more effective performance rather than just setting the goal itself. And so we definitely want to teach our clients how to write this stuff down. We definitely want to teach our clients how to continually monitor it frequently. This is why we're such a big fan of like food logs. And me, I'm a huge fan of workout logs too. You should definitely, if you guys haven't done it, you should absolutely hop on Amazon. Well, actually, you should definitely go to a local store and buy a food log or a workout log of some type. And if you can't find one, make one. You go get a blank journal and make one yourself. But like writing your workouts down and seeing like your progress in terms of like your weights and everything is just lightning for your brain. It's great. There's nothing. It's there's so many times where it takes out the guesswork for you. Like you'll go to the gym and be like, all right, I think I was around like 145 last time. Let's put 145 on there and we'll start lifting, right? And then you're like, man, that was tough, right? And you rack it. And then like maybe you go home later and check like an app or something where maybe you did write down how much weight and it was like 165. And you're like, what is 20 pounds? Right? And it's like your bad memory led to you feeling like you worked hard, but like you clearly have the capacity to do more, right? That's one of the biggest advantages to like a workout journal. I will show a really good example of how I used to use workout journals when I was like working like session to session to session, like on the gym floor. This is somewhat manipulative and I don't necessarily recommend this. I mean, I will say it was very effective. But this is not in any PowerPoints or text or anywhere. This is a Brad thing. So I insisted that my clients always bring their workout journals. And if they didn't, because I would say, well, now I don't know what your workout is because I had it written down in there, which is somewhat untrue because I always had a copy in their file as well, because I'd always copy the numbers down from their beginning to their end. But I would go, all right, well, we'll just reach into the preset workouts. And I had some like pre-mades, which I could just very quickly set up like a little circuit and put them through that. And I made sure that those pre-mades were just brutal. Like they were designed to make you throw up. And so my clients were like, oh God. I'd be like, yeah, well, I mean, we had to do that because I couldn't remember what your workout was. You should bring your workout journal next time. It's a little manipulative, I will be perfectly honest, but it was also very effective. People started leaving in their car, which meant that they could never forget it, which is good. That's exactly, that was exactly the goal. There we go. So now we know that, again, like I said, self-monitoring leads to higher levels of adherence. We know that food logs, workout logs, all of that makes your reaching your goals much more effective. So why is it the goals are so effective? Like, we've been talking about how great they are this whole time, but like why? Like, what is it about our brains and the way that they're wired that makes a goal, like goal setting method, like why does it make that so effective? Well, for most part, the reasons that we think it's so effective is like, number one, it directs your attention and your action. We know that human beings, and I hate to admit this, like I really hate to admit this, we know that human beings are not very good at multitasking. As someone who loves multitasking with all of his heart, it pains me to admit that like every time we've ever measured someone's productivity, it has been shown that multitasking is less efficient, but it feels so efficient. All right, anyway, I'm done arguing for that. But it gives you a specific directed thing to focus on. You are only focusing on one thing, and that makes you better at it, right? This way you can be the master of a trade, right? Rather than the jack of all trades, master of none, right? It also gives us a mobilizing effort. Oftentimes when we write down our goals, we know exactly what actions we need to take in order to achieve those goals, right? So it gives us like a mobilized, it tells us what to do, right? When I sit down to make the goal of, I want to get to the gym 25 times this month, right? Like, let's say that's my goal, right? I know exactly what I have to do because I wrote that down. that's so easy. I was like, okay, well, it's in the goal itself. What do I have to do? Go to the gym, right? Like, even if it just means checking in, right? It also enhances your persistence by writing something down. There's something special about like putting it into the freaking world. Now you've like birthed this piece of paper that has your goal on it. And even if you threw it away, it's out there in a trash can somewhere and you're like, oh, it's still I gotta meet it. Like, that's the only way I can scrub that thing off this planet. There's something about like writing your goals down that's very special there. So because once you kind of create it, we know it exists. I used to have clients. I made most of my clients keep their goals in their workout journals because they could flip back to it and see it frequently. But even if they didn't, even if like they did, I would just say, okay, we'll just write it down. And they're like, what? I'm like, just write it down on this piece of paper right here. I want to keep this piece of paper, and I would often like throw it away. Like if I'm being honest. But I'm gonna keep this piece of paper like right here. And there's just something about like knowing that it's out there that makes your skin itch. You're like, I don't know why I'm itching. I did say I wanted to be a millionaire. there's just something about it. And then it also helps you develop new learning strategies. I think that this last one is kind of a byproduct of these other ones. By having like directing your attention and mobilizing your effort and like knowing which direction to go, it helps you develop new learning strategies because now you kind of have to come up with like a play for how you're going to meet that goal, right? And so like, again, if you said like you wanted to save $100,000 in 3 years, right? Crazy hard stretch goal. When you start thinking about that more and more and more, there's going to be moments where, you're eating dinner and you're like, what if I did this, right? And then later you're going to be in the shower and you go, or I could try this, right? You start to like think about all these things. And so the developing new strategies now, I think this is kind of a byproduct, but it's definitely one of the reasons why goals, like writing your goals down and thinking about your goals is so effective. Because all of a sudden your brain starts looking at all these different directions it can go. So we're gonna watch a little video here. These can be a little rough sometimes, fair warning. But we're gonna watch a little video here that has information about setting goals and the goal setting system. We're gonna watch 2 videos. One is gonna be like the different systems, and the second one is gonna be all about SMART goals. So this is actually a NASM specific video, and my computer is lagging and will not let me. There we go. So here is goal setting in action here.
It is important for wellness and fitness professionals to guide their clients in the process of goal development. Many different systems exist for successful goal setting, but most of these have 3 components: planning and education, setting customized goals, and providing goal evaluation and reevaluation. Planning and education is the first major component of goal setting and should occur in the first meeting between the professional and the client. The professional needs to go on a fact-finding mission through discussion with the client. The professional should use conversation to seek insight into the client's history, interests, and desires that will help in goal development. It becomes the responsibility of the professional to educate the client on the importance of goal setting, how to set effective goals, and the purpose of various types of goals. Both the client and coach should work on drafting first versions of goals after the first session meeting. The next part of goal setting occurs during the second session and should be a collaboration between the fitness professional and the client to review the potential goals and mutually decide on customized goals for the client. While the professional may have the experience and expertise to set goals, it's important for the client to feel a sense of ownership for their goals. Having the client participate in the goal-setting process will help with the adherence to the goals that are decided upon. Once goals are in place, the process has been started. The professional and client cannot forget to evaluate and reevaluate the agreed-upon goals.
I can't turn it off. Okay. So we're going to kind of go through exactly what they just talked about, right? So when it comes to creating our goals, this is kind of funny. Like NASM's going to teach you in the regular textbook, very much like the SMART goal. Why? What is wrong? It's going to teach you like the SMART goal system. No, that's totally wrong. Sorry, I'm like looking at this formatting and I'm making the type A part of my personality go crazy. We're going to teach you the SMART goal system today because it's in your regular textbook, and regular textbook's going to cover SMART goals. However, you'll notice when you go through the reading, it will have all of the pieces to SMART goals, but it will never say like the SMART acronym. And I don't really know why they did that, especially because like these materials are meant to just be like an expounded version of your other materials. But you will notice like I'm going to put the SMART acronym up. Actually, I don't think I do put it up here. Yeah, it's not. I'm not going to have the SMART acronym in your notes, but we're going to use it to talk about. We're going to talk about like what SMART actually means, because that's just meant to guide you into creating effective goals. So all the pieces are here, but they're kind of broken up, which is weird. The video will kind of clear that up. But our general principles, like when it comes to writing a goal, right? And this is just like general rules. If you're building a table, you need legs, a tabletop. You need support braces to hold the legs in place so they don't wobble. Right? Those are all the pieces to make a good table. Here are all the pieces to make a good goal. So you should set specific goals that are measurable. That is huge. That's actually the first, that's the SM in SMART. But you want specific and measurable goals. You want to set goals that are realistic but challenging, right? Make sure we know that challenging goals lead to higher adherence, so make sure they're challenging, but they should be attainable. They should be realistic, right? You also want to create a combination of short-term and long-term goals rather than just creating like one big stretch goal. The problem with creating one big stretch goal is that you'll tend to not know when you're making progress. So then like maybe you are suddenly 6 months in and you're like, all right, I've been like working really hard. Oh my God, I'm going in the wrong direction. Yeah, that's like the problem with only long-term goals. And the problem with short-term goals is that you tend to get really scattered and you don't focus on anything in particular. So like that's not great either, right? It's like suddenly you want to get really good at push-ups, but you're also trying to get really good at maximal chest strength. Those two things go in totally opposite directions, right? One is endurance-based and one is strength-based. So like too many short-term goals can also lead to you getting scattered. You want to focus on performance and process goals. We already kind of talked about that, right? Rather than outcome goals. You want to sit down with your client and develop a goal commitment, which really just means, I mean, honestly, it can be as simple as just writing it down. But I think they're going to take it into I'm not going to say it's like cheesy, but they're going to take it into a little bit of a deeper realm where it's like, create the commitment and sign the contract, there is something special about that. Like if it's special to even write it down, obviously that's even more special. But it could be one of those things that leads to somebody being like, this is hokey. Then we also want to set goal achievement strategies. So then we want to sit down and come up with an action plan, right? Goals are almost like the step one in the personal training process, right? We need to identify the problem. Well, writing out a goal, right? We have identified specifically what it is we want to achieve. Step two is solving that problem, right? Coming up with a solution. And then step three is implementing that solution. Well, here's where we're looking at that, right? Coming up with an achievement strategy, that's us solving the problem. How am I going to get to, saving $100,000 in 3 years? Well, we know that that's 36 months. This is going to be nuts. So 100,000 divided by 36 months. We got to find a way to put away $2,700 a month aside, right? Pretty freaking stretchy goal, but not impossible. Right now, I know exactly like what needs to be accomplished. Let me break down even further. How much is that? How much is that per week? Right, 2777 divided by. We've got 4 weeks in a month, right? So that means I need to put away $700 a week. If I were to, pick up a second job that earns $700 a week and spend none of that money and only put it away, there it is. Now you're going to be like, well, who has time for that? And it's like, that's a different problem. That's where suddenly we need to look at a different, we got to come up with a different plan to overcome that problem. But at least we have immediately figured out exactly what it is we need to do in order to achieve our goal. Now we got to come up with another strategy to get to succeed in the strategy that we came up with. This is why stretch goals are big. Then we have goal feedback and evaluation. This is where you as the fitness professional, you gotta sit down with your client and talk about like, okay, you know, let's talk about your goal and figure out like what's going to work and what's not, right? Like, let's say they, you know, like, I want to come in first to the Boston Marathon. We're going to give them feedback and say, I love it. I'm glad that you're motivated. You have to remember that like you don't have control over someone else. So why don't we try to achieve our best time at the Boston Marathon, right? That's an example of like feedback and evaluating. Like, do we think that this goal is realistic? I want to lose 14 pounds in this week. Okay, great. I'm glad you're motivated. Let's sit down. We know that we have to cut 3,500 calories and create a deficit of 3,500 in order to lose 1 pound. That means that you need to create a deficit of 3,500 times 14, 49,000 calories this week. There are 7 days in this week. You need to cut 7,000 calories a day over the next week. Is it realistic to lose 14 pounds? Okay, maybe not. Well, it's realistic to lose 14 pounds, just not in this week. You know, like, great. That's feedback. That's evaluation, where we are going to sit down and look at like what's realistic and what's possible. And then, and this is actually one of the ones that I think sometimes people struggle with the most, but is arguably the most important. That's not true. The most important is specific. Set timelines. Make your goals time oriented. Put an expiration date on your goal. There's something special about having an expiration date. If you guys want to watch a really awesome video, you know what? Actually, we are blazing through this PowerPoint. I'm gonna pull it up. Inside the mind of a master. Okay, this video is kind of lengthy. Oh, short version. Ooh. No. We're gonna watch the whole thing. This is so important. This is such a great freaking video. This right here is gonna show you why time-oriented goals are so effective. So I'm gonna pull this up here. Hold on, I can't get rid of this banner because of Zoom. There we go. That broke my brain for a second.
I was a government major, which means I had to write a lot of papers. Now, when a normal student writes a paper, they might spread the work out a little like this. So, you know, you get started maybe a little slowly, but you get enough done in the first week that with some heavier days later on, everything gets done and things stay civil. And I would want to do that like that. That would be the plan. I would have it all ready to go, but then actually the paper would come along, and then I would kind of do this. And that would happen every single paper. But then came my 90-page senior thesis, a paper you're supposed to spend a year on. I knew for a paper like that, my normal workflow was not an option. It was way too big a project. So I planned things out, and I decided I kind of had to go something like this. This is how the year would go. So I'd start off light, and I'd bump it up in the middle months. And then at the end, I would kick it up into high gear. It's just like a little staircase. How hard can it be? Just walk up the stairs? No big deal, right? But then, funniest thing happened. Those first few months, they came and went, and I couldn't quite do stuff. So we had an awesome new revised plan. And then those middle months actually went by, and I didn't really write words. And so we were here. And then 2 months turned into 1 month, which turned into 2 weeks. And one day I woke up with 3 days until the deadline, still not having written a word. And so I did the only thing I could. I wrote 90 pages over 72 hours, pulling not one, but 2 all-nighters. Humans are not supposed to pull 2 all-nighters. Sprinted across campus, dove in slow motion, and got it in just at the deadline. I thought that was the end of everything. But a week later, I get a call. It's the school. And they say, "Is this Tim Urban?" And I say, "Yeah." And they say, "We need to talk about your thesis." And I say, "Okay." And they say, "It's the best one we've ever seen." That did not happen. It was a very, very bad thesis. I just wanted to enjoy that one moment when all of you thought, this guy is amazing. No, it was very, very bad. Anyway, today I'm a writer, blogger guy. I write the blog Wait, But Why? And a couple of years ago, I decided to write about procrastination. My behavior has always perplexed the non-procrastinators around me, and I wanted to explain to the non-procrastinators of the world what goes on in the heads of procrastinators and why we are the way we are. Now, I had a hypothesis that the brains of procrastinators were actually different than the brains of other people. And to test this, I found an MRI lab that actually let me scan both my brain and the brain of a proven non-procrastinator, and so I could compare them, and I actually brought them here to show you today, and I want you to take a look carefully to see if you can notice a difference. And I know that if you're not a trained brain expert, it's not that obvious, but just take a look, okay? So here's the brain of a non-procrastinator. Now, here's my brain. There is a difference. Both brains have a rational decision maker in them, but the procrastinator's brain also has an instant gratification monkey. Now, what does this mean for the procrastinator? Well, it means everything's fine until this happens. So the rational decision maker will make the rational decision to do something productive, but the monkey doesn't like that plan. So he actually takes the wheel and he says, actually, let's read the entire Wikipedia page of the Nancy Kerrigan-Tanya Harding scandal, because I just remembered that happened. Then we're going to go over to the fridge. We're going to see if there's anything new in there since 10 minutes ago. After that, we're going to go on a YouTube spiral that starts with videos of Richard Feynman talking about magnets and ends much, much later with us watching interviews with Justin Bieber's mom. All of that's going to take a while, so we're not going to really have room on the schedule for any work today. Sorry. Now, what is going on here? The instant gratification monkey does not seem like a guy you want behind the wheel. He lives entirely in the present moment. He has no memory of the past, no knowledge of the future, and he only cares about two things: easy and fun. Now, in the animal world, that works fine. If you're a dog and you spend your whole life doing nothing other than easy and fun things, you're a huge success. And to the monkey, humans are just another animal species. He has to keep well slept, well fed, and propagating into the next generation, which in tribal times might have worked okay. But if you haven't noticed, now we're not in tribal times. We're in an advanced civilization, and the monkey does not know what that is, which is why we have another guy in our brain, the rational decision maker, who gives us the ability to do things no other animal can do. We can visualize the future. We can see the big picture. We can make long-term plans. And he wants to take all of that into account. And he wants to just have us do whatever makes sense to be doing right now. Now, sometimes it makes sense to be doing things that are easy and fun, like when you're having dinner or going to bed or enjoying well-earned leisure time. That's why there's an overlap. Sometimes they agree. But other times, it makes much more sense to be doing things that are harder and less pleasant for the sake of the big picture, and that's when we have a conflict. And for the procrastinator, that conflict tends to end a certain way every time, leaving him spending a lot of time in this orange zone, an easy and fun place that's entirely out of the make sense circle. I call it the dark playground. Now, the dark playground is a place that all of you procrastinators out there know very well. It's where leisure activities happen at times when leisure activities are not supposed to be happening. The fun you have in the dark playground isn't actually fun because it's completely unearned and the air is filled with guilt, dread, anxiety, self-hatred, all those good procrastinator feelings. And the question is, in this situation with the monkey behind the wheel, how does the procrastinator ever get himself over here to this blue zone, a less pleasant place, but where really important things happen? Well, turns out that the procrastinator has a guardian angel, someone who's always looking down on him and watching over him in his darkest moments, someone called the panic monster. Now, the panic monster is dormant most of the time, but he suddenly wakes up anytime a deadline gets too close or there's danger of public embarrassment, a career disaster, or some other scary consequence. And importantly, he's the only thing that the monkey is terrified of. Now, he became very relevant in my life pretty recently because the people of TED reached out to me about 6 months ago and invited me to do a TED Talk. Now, of course, I said yes. It's always been a dream of mine to have done a TED Talk in the past. But in the middle of all this excitement, the rational decision maker seemed to have something else in his mind. He was saying, are we clear on what we just accepted? Do we get what's going to be now happening one day in the future? We need to sit down and work on this right now. And the monkey said, totally agree, but also let's just open Google Earth and let's zoom into the bottom of India, like 200 feet above the ground, and we're going to scroll up for 2.5 hours till we get to the top of the country so we can get a better feel for India. So that's what we did that day. As 6 months turned into 4, and then 2, and then 1, the people of TED decided to release the speakers. And I opened up the website, and there was my face staring right back at me, and guess who woke up? So the panic monster starts losing his mind, and a few seconds later, the whole system's in mayhem. And the monkey, who, remember, he's terrified of the panic monster, boom, he's up the tree. And finally, the rational decision maker can take the wheel and I can start working on the talk. Now, the panic monster explains all kinds of pretty insane procrastinator behavior, like how someone like me could spend 2 weeks unable to start the opening sentence of a paper and then miraculously find the unbelievable work ethic to stay up all night and write 8 pages. And this entire situation with the 3 characters, this is the procrastinator's system. It's not pretty, but in the end, it works. And this is what I decided to write about on the blog just a couple of years ago. Now, when I did, I was amazed by the response. Literally thousands of emails came in from all different kinds of people from all over the world doing all different kinds of things. These are people who are nurses and bankers and painters and engineers and lots of PhD students. And they were all writing saying the same thing. I have this problem too. But what struck me was the contrast between the light tone of the post and the heaviness of these emails. These people were writing with intense frustration about what procrastination had done to their lives, about what this monkey had done to them. And I thought about this, and I said, if the procrastinator system works, then what's going on? Why are all these people in such a dark place? Well, turns out that there's 2 kinds of procrastination. Everything I've talked about today, the examples I've given, they all have deadlines. And when there's deadlines, the effects of procrastination are contained to the short term because the panic monster gets involved. But there's a second kind of procrastination that happens in situations when there is no deadline. So if you want to have a career where you want to be a self-starter, something in the arts, something entrepreneurial, there's no deadlines on those things at first, because nothing's happening at first, not until you've gone out and done the hard work to get some momentum, to get things going. There's also all kinds of important things outside of your career that don't involve any deadlines, like seeing your family or exercising and taking care of your health, working on your relationship or getting out of a relationship that isn't working. Now, if procrastinator's only mechanism of doing these hard things is the panic monster, that's a problem because in all of these non-deadline situations, the panic monster doesn't show up. He has nothing to wake up for. So the effects of procrastination, they're not contained. They just extend outward forever. And it's this long-term kind of procrastination that's much less visible and much less talked about than the funnier short-term deadline-based kind. It's usually suffered quietly and privately, and it can be the source of a huge amount of long-term unhappiness and regrets. And I thought, that's why these people are emailing, and that's why they're in such a bad place. It's not that they're cramming for some project. It's that long-term procrastination has made them feel like a spectator at times in their own lives.
the frustration was not that they couldn't achieve their dreams, it's that they weren't even able to start chasing them. So I read these emails and I had a little bit of an epiphany that I don't think non-procrastinators exist. That's right. I think all of you are procrastinators. Now, you might not all be a mess, like some of us. And some of you may have a healthy relationship with deadlines. But remember, the monkey's sneakiest trick is when the deadlines aren't there. Now, I want to show you one last thing. I call this a life calendar. That's one box for every week of a 90-year life. That's not that many boxes, especially since we've already used a bunch of those. So I think we need to all take a long, hard look at that calendar. We need to think about what we're really procrastinating on, because everyone is procrastinating on something in life. We need to stay aware of the instant gratification monkey. That's a job for all of us. And because there's not that many boxes on there, it's a job that should probably start today. Well, maybe not today, but sometime soon. Thank you.
Okay. I love that video. But that right there, that last concept that he was talking about with like the life calendar, where it's like all the boxes in your life and there's not really that many of them, that's an example of like why you're like, oh man, like I need to get to work on, achieving whatever it is I set out to achieve. That is like setting a timeline for your goal. And it's why time-oriented goals are so effective. Probably should have shown that when I get down to the time-oriented stuff down here, but I got really excited and wanted to show that video. So I've got the instant gratification monkey as well. So first thing we need to talk about, specific and measurable goals, right? This is definitely something super important to us. Specific goals are goals that are going to enhance your performance because they really don't leave you any wiggle room, right? They enhance your performance by providing specific feedback on the progress towards meeting that goal. If your goal is something super specific, when you're making progress towards it. If it's really vague, it's hard to tell when you're making progress towards it. So a good example is like increase your fruits and vegetable servings from 2 to 4 servings per day. That's a really great specific goal versus I want to get healthier, right? How do you know when you are actually getting healthier? Like how do you know that you're even making progress towards getting healthier unless you're getting your blood checked all the time? Not very realistic, but you do know that eating more fruits and vegetables results in greater health. So, and it's something that you have a lot of control over, right? So if you wanted to like have control over your goal and make progress, right, this is how you're going to do it. And so that's a specific goal, right? Increase your fruits and vegetable servings, right? And it's measurable from 2 to 4 per day, right? That's definitely something that you can measure directly. Or maybe it's something like, I want to increase the minutes of moderate exercise from 50 minutes to 100 per week, right? That's awesome, right? The USDA recommends 150 minutes of low intensity activity, but it recommends 75 minutes of moderate intensity activity. So if you're trying to get up to 100 weeks of moderate intensity activity, that can be enough to stave off a lot of those negative health effects. So again, it's specific, it's increased the number of minutes of exercise, and it's measurable by making it from 50 to 100, right? Rather than I want to exercise more, which is not very specific, right? Now, you also, while you're doing this, want to make sure that your goals are realistic, but they should obviously they should be challenging, right? We definitely want to make sure that our goals are still challenging. And so your goals should be challenging, they should be difficult, but still attainable. It shouldn't be something that's impossible to achieve or something that you don't have control over. Coaches have a great impact on like whether or not you are creating realistic goals, but we also have a really great impact on whether or not your goals are going to be effective, right? Like if it is realistic, if somebody says like, I want to lose 20 pounds in the next 3 months, right? I've tried to do this in the past and it's never worked. Every time I've ever tried to do this, I fall off a wagon about a month in or something. Or I go the whole, I go the whole 3 months and it doesn't happen, right? This is where you as like a coach can make something that is challenging also realistic, right? It is okay to like set those challenging goals. We're here to make sure that it's possible to be achieved. So we have a really great impact on whether or not these types of goals are going to be effective. Now the next section we look at is sort of transferring away from the smart system, right? Like we got SM here. This would actually be referred to as like attainable or actionable sometimes goals. Then you would have like realistic and then time-oriented, which we're going to see time-oriented down here. So this is where they're really not kind of breaking down the acronym, but I'm going to go into that at the end. But another thing that we do also want to do is we want to set long-term and short-term goals in combination. The reason this has been shown to be so effective, again, a long-term goal gives you, it's like the carrot at the end of a stick, right? Like that's something really that you can focus on in the long term. But your short-term goals provide feedback as to whether or not you are making progress. If your goal is to be able to run a marathon, right? And that's your long-term goal. Like in 1 year, I want to be able to run 26.2 miles, right? Well, maybe your short-term goal for now is just going to be, maybe your short-term goal for now is just to be able to go out for 3 runs a week for the next 4 weeks. And then your next short-term goal is like, okay, I want to be able to run 2 miles uninterrupted, right? And then your next goal from there is I want to be able to run 6 miles, right? Like setting like different and like slowly pushing up that tempo is providing you feedback. And if like all of a sudden you get to this point where you're trying to run 16 miles and it doesn't happen, right? Maybe you didn't meet your short-term goal. Cool, that's great. That's a good type of feedback. That's going to show us, hey, this goal, we're starting to plateau a little bit. We got to make sure that we adjust in the long term by maybe making up in the short term, so it provides us that feedback, which is always so important. Goal setting has been shown to be really effective when we implement both of these. What a long-term goal are goals that provide direction and keep your individual focused on like an end result, right? I want to lose 50 pounds by the end of the year. Short-term goals provide feedback about your successes and your pitfalls. I want to lose 1 pound a week for the month of January, right? 1 pound a week, we got 52 weeks in a year. That's a goal that directly feeds into exactly meeting this one, right? So if it doesn't happen, right, that's going to provide feedback and say like, okay, well, our action plan, like the way that we decided to achieve this goal isn't working. So we either need to adjust your long-term goal or we need to come up with a different strategy. And so it can be used to help you reset your long-term goals if they are unrealistic, but it can also be used to help you come up with a new plan of action for how to achieve that goal and a new achievement strategy. So here's some really good examples of long-term and short-term goals. Run 30 minutes. A short-term goal is like run 30 minutes 3 or 4 times a week, right? And your long-term goal, again, being able to run a marathon in a year's time. Short-term goal, lose 100 pounds over the course of 2 years. Short-term goal, reduce your caloric intake by 2,500 down to 2,000. Long-term goal, walk 100 hours over the next 6 months. I love that one. I like to call that a chipper goal. And then your short-term goal is to walk 1 hour 3 or 4 times per week. I really love chipper goals, actually. They're often long-term goals that a lot of times they're kind of cool. You just write them down and you slowly chip away at them. I like to call them that. I don't know if there's an official name out there for those, but I love chipper goals. I think those are super fun. It's like, maybe you're chipping away at being able to do 100 push-ups in a row. And it's like every couple of weeks you reevaluate and you're like, all right, it went up just a little bit, and you're just chipping away at that number until eventually you get there. I feel like chipper goals are like building a house. It's like I have time to work on the bathroom this weekend. And that's all the time I have. Great, it's a piece of the house. Chipped away at some way you got to get done. Goal achievement strategies, right? How are we actually going to sort of get down to this? Well, again, by focusing on performance and process goals, this is one of the best ways to do it. And so these require you to reach long-term, maybe like what an outcome goal might be. And so we know that these are really effective at enhancing your performance, because like if you are focused on your personal achievement and you are focused on you getting better at the process, that can result in you being the best and winning in an outcome goal, you know? And that's really what we're looking at there. Now, creating a goal commitment. We're actually not seeing that up here in the notes, but creating a goal commitment is making sure that you are helping your clients sit down and actually, like, it's almost like it's like a verbal or mental contract that they want to like achieve this, right? And so we know that our clients being committed to meeting their goal is super, super, super important. This is one of the reasons why you should never set goals for your client. They should be the ones setting their own goals, because if you set it for them, it's not going to be as important to them. So goal commitment is very essential here. And so you want your clients to go from like, oh, I wish this would happen, to, oh man, I hope this happens, to, I'm going to try to make this happen, to like, I really want this to happen and I'm committed to making this happen, right? That's sort of pushing somebody through like the levels of commitment. It's almost similar to the stages of change, except it's related to like sticking to a specific action. So how do you enhance commitment? How do you get your clients to actually do this? Again, make sure that your goals are self-determined. Your client should be setting them, not you. This is where you as well, like, make sure that you're setting goals that are important to you. Don't just find something that you think is cool on the internet and be like, I want to try that. Sometimes that's just not very powerful. And so like, you want to make sure that it's important to you and that you are the one who's like committed to it. And record your goals systematically. That's another way to enhance commitment. The more often you are sort of premeditating on this and like writing things down, it enhances your persistence every time. So like remembering to write in your journal, or writing in your food log or workout log or anything like that, that like recommits somebody every single time. And that's also why that's so important at creating like these good habits. And then another way to like really enhance commitment, and we're going to see this come back when we get to like social influences, is like share your goals with others. Oh boy, will that will enhance your commitment, because like there's just something about like the social pressures of like, oh man, I told somebody, and if I don't like achieve it, they're going to know I didn't achieve it, right? And so there's something special about like sharing your goals with others at enhancing persistence. Like I said, we're going to talk more about that. And how we use social pressures in a positive way once we get to, it's actually the final PowerPoint for this course. Achievement strategies that we've got, those are some of them, but we also want to create our client like committing, generating that commitment in order to stick to it. How do we get them to make that commitment? Well, again, make sure that your goals are self-oriented. Keep systematic records of your goals and share your goals with others. All of those very key aspects of creating like a goal action plan. And speaking of action plans, an action plan is a specific strategy in order to meet your goals, right? Is this actually what's going to show up? Hold on a second. No, it's actually not on here. So so we're actually not seeing action plan in here, but we are going to talk a lot about it coming up. So action plans are where you are going to create a specific like step by step process for how you're going to achieve this goal. And so it's a combination of like feedback from coaches and trainers in order to enhance that performance. And so we know that like a combination of like your goal setting and feedback is what enhances that. And this is why you as the coach want to continually check in with your clients and say like, all right, so we wanted to achieve this week, and we said we were going to try this, and this. What did we try? What worked? What didn't work? And where are we now? Right? that evaluation allows us to make adjustments. It's like, okay, so trying to enhance your fruit and vegetable servings from 2 to 4 servings per day, it was not effective to try to split that out throughout the day. So instead, because maybe they eat out a lot, they were like, well, I found that because I have to order lunch at work and I eat out all the time, there just isn't very many fruits and vegetables in those. And because I always eat out, it just wasn't realistic for me to get that into my diet. Cool, great, awesome evaluation. Let's find a new strategy. Do you think it's realistic for you to put together 2 snacks that you can at home that you can bring to work with you? One that is like something like, maybe some broccoli with like a side of ranch or carrot sticks, celery with peanut butter, like some type of paired snack that'll help you like get some of those vegetable servings in. And then earlier in the day, maybe it's something like apple slices with even just like a little bit of caramel. I know it's sugar based, but like caramel dip or something like that, something that's easy to like adhere to, or maybe some like apple and cheese, right? That's pretty healthy. What can we do to like maybe bring some snacks in to enhance those servings, right? That's a great example. Or let's look at the area, like where do you work, right? Let's look in the area. Is there healthier options for you to eat out? Is there a place where you can get something that does have fruits and vegetables as like a side dish, right? We look at what worked and what didn't work. We find that if it didn't work, we reevaluate it and come up with a new plan, right? That's going to be what we help our clients with. And this stuff becomes pretty, like all this sounds really lofty and it all sounds, sometimes it's really easy when you're describing it and then you're like, how am I really going to come up with all these different plans? Honestly, the more you work with people and the more like, you see these unique challenges that people face every day. And they're like, I don't know what to do. But then like maybe one client tells you something that worked for them and like you hear that and you use that on your next client. That's a lot of times how you sort of start to develop these different action plans. I had a client who she was really like super motivated, but she had like just like a lot of like challenges at work. She just didn't have very much control over her hours, and she was like side hustling like crazy. The fact that she even had time to work out, I remember just being amazed at. It's like seeing what her schedule was like. I was like, that is insane. She's like, yeah, I only ever eat out. And she's like, and I'm so stressed, like I'm just shoving food into my mouth. She like would have these really crazy hours because she worked in like the film industry and stuff. And I was like, all right, well, that sounds like super, super tough. But like you also do have like these kind of extended downtimes when you actually get them, right? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, okay, well, maybe there's something we can do with that. And like, that's all I said. I was like, maybe there's something we can figure out to do. And then what she found was that like during that downtime, she actually started having like a friend come over. This is crazy because this led to her even being like more busy. But she had like a friend come over and they would start like meal prepping together and they would do all this stuff. And then she focused on like frozen meal prep. And so like she would just store all of this. And anytime she knew that she was like super busy, she would just pull one of those out. Wasn't a specific number of calories. She didn't know exactly what she was getting every single time, but it was something that she had like a lot of control over. And so it made it very easy for her when she knew she wasn't going to be able to eat out, to have like a healthier option, and she could still like have all this. And it all involved like taking a couple hours at a time to prep super far in advance. And I remember hearing that and being like, that was a great plan. Like you nailed it, and I've used that with other clients like later on. So that's a lot of times where some of these action plans come from. So that's a big one. Evaluate and adjust if necessary. And then always set like a timeline for your client, right? Set specific dates for when you are going to reevaluate goals and when you are going to hopefully achieve that goal, right? That way you can also set timelines for like when you are monitoring things, which give it like a little bit of pressure. It's like, okay, I don't necessarily need to have like my goal met, but I am checking in on it. So I should have made progress. And then that gives you something to really kind of mobilize and focus on. Again, it gives you that little bit of like pressure from having like a deadline, right? Like we respond really well to deadlines. So that allows us to track our progress and motivate our clients, right? Even if it is motivating through like, oh God, I got to do it, it's almost stressful in a way. but the good type of stress. What are some of the challenges? Like, what are things that are gonna, obviously we know it's like, okay, well, now that I have all this information, surely I'll be the most effective, productive person in the world. Not always. We got to look at some of the challenges that are associated with this. Some of the biggest challenges and the most common one that you're going to see is that people tend to set very non-specific, they set very non-specific goals. So that can be a challenge. So helping your clients like sit down and reevaluate and make those goals ironclad and more specific. Another problem that people have is they tend to set too many goals at once. This is a classic. They come in and they're like, I want to exercise 6 days a week, and I want to eat healthy, and I want to get enough sleep, and I want to come to the gym every day, and I want to do this, and I want to do that. And it's like, man, that is a lot of things to do. If you are like, not making adjustments to the other parts of your life, I don't know how you're going to find time to do all that. But what we can do is focus on maybe 1 or 2 small things for a little while, become a master at those things to where they're not really effort-based anymore, and then implement more later. We want to get to a place where like healthy habits are habits, right? They're just part of our life. Grass is green, sky is blue. I wake up every day at the same time. These are just how the world works. That's very, very helpful for making sure that your client doesn't do too much at once and gets overwhelmed and then quits. Set only short-term goals. That can be a very big problem. A lot of times your client will get scattered when they do that. If they're only creating short-term goals, one of the problems with that is that they're not really working towards anything. It is kind of that jack of all trades, but master of none situation. And so we want to make sure that we are helping them kind of create short-term goals, which are great, but then long-term goals that keep them focused. And that way, if they say something like a short-term goal of maybe they're on a weight loss journey and they're like, yeah, I want to be able to gain 15 pounds of muscle as well. It's like, okay, so those are kind of working against each other, right? Like one is a caloric deficit and one is a caloric surplus. So because those are going in 2 different directions, which one do we primarily want to focus on? Maybe we pull a little bit from the weight loss category so that we can add a little bit to the muscle building category, and we can go through maybe a bulking and a cutting cycle. And so then we kind of readjust that. Rather than getting too scattered by only having short-term goals and only focusing on too many small little things at once. And then one of the other big ones is only setting long-term goals, right? That also leads to a challenge, right? Because then long-term goals are in the future, and we as humans love instant gratification. So when something's super far away and you focus on it, you tend to and you only focus on it for a little while and then you lose your attention on it. We tend to get scattered. We tend to get scattered that way as well. So we don't just want to do that. What did I hear somebody say? I just remembered somebody used an analogy one time to describe short-term and long-term goals. I'm trying to remember what it was. It was related to driving. It was a long-term goal is if you only focus on long-term goals and you just keep your eyes on the horizon and you're just looking for the state line the entire time while you're driving, you're not seeing any of the small stuff around you. But if you're only focused on the small stuff around you, you're likely to start, going in the wrong direction. You might miss your turn or something like that. It was really good, and I need to look it up. I need to find that analogy because that's kind of the problem with only setting one or only setting the other. So here's our flow chart for how to work with our clients when it comes to setting these goals, right? So we're going to start with planning and education. First, we're just going to start with gathering some information about what our client wants to achieve. We're going to work on making our goals specific first, and then maybe educate our clients on how to set SMART goals, how to use a combination of short-term and long-term goals, and then have our client actually create a few, right? It's okay, so now you told me your overall big goal. We made it more specific. Now we've taught you how to create short and long-term goals and how to use the SMART system. let's come up with 3 short-term goals and 1 long-term goal. And these 3 should feed into this 4th one. So then we sit down and work with our clients to actually do that, and we reevaluate and kind of customize them. Then we want to review those. Actually, that's where we're at right here. So then we want to review those goals and like set very customized versions. Then we want to, you know, over the next few sessions and few weeks, we're going to evaluate and reevaluate to see if they're making progress towards their goals or not, right? We're going to check to see, it's like, okay, your goal is to, again, like, let's say gain 10 pounds of muscle in the next 6 months. Did we gain, you know, a half a pound of muscle this week? And it's like, we look and it's like, maybe they lost a little bit of weight and they gained a little bit of muscle, right? Okay, that's great. Like we, you know, we toned up a little bit, but we're not quite on schedule to like meet this muscle building goal. So we're going to lower your deficit just a little bit. That way we don't have too big of an energy gap. So we're going to raise your calories by, you know, 100 calories this week to see if that works. And there we go. Just like a small adjustment like that. That's evaluating and reevaluating. So here's where we are putting our goal setting tool, right, to work with our stages of change model that we've been talking about and identified yesterday. So goal setting in the stages, we should be able to help our clients set stage appropriate goals. If your client's in pre-contemplation, the goal of losing 50 pounds, probably not very realistic to help that person. So we want to match the specific needs to their specific stage of change. So let's take a look at this. This is actually in your book. I don't know why they don't put it in the PowerPoint, but I've got to go to the book. Manual goal setting. And put it over here. And then let's go to the end. Hey. Here's the flow chart. There's some roll. By the way, this is great. There's like some really good examples of like goal setting conversations that were like recorded from trainers working with clients, or maybe they were just made up. But either way, like it kind of shows you like, so do we think that's a realistic goal? And it's like, yeah, I do. And it's like, well, evidence here, here, here. Now, do you think it's a realistic goal? And they're like, well, maybe not. So really good like examples of like kind of working your way through that transcript. Okay, here are our specific goals based on our specific interventions for whatever stage we're in. If you've got a client who's in the pre-contemplation stage, first off, congrats. I don't know how you sold somebody if they are not thinking about achieving. Like I said, most trainers are not going to see somebody in the pre-contemplation stage, but maybe it's your mom. You know, my mom is constantly in the pre-contemplation of doing the things I tell her. So not intending to change within the 6 months. So these interventions should focus on creating goals that will help them become better informed about a healthy lifestyle. The goal is not to get somebody to lose weight. Instead, the goal is to be like, okay, I want you to complete 4 coaching sessions and maybe the associated homework assignments with that. If they do have it, it's like, all right, your homework is I want you to research some of the effects of obesity. I want you to research a little bit about like what it's like to have high cholesterol, what the side effects of certain medications are, something like that, right? You're educating your client. That's an example. Another one would be identify the impact of unhealthy habits and list 5 benefits that could be realized by adopting a healthy lifestyle program. I like this one way better. So like maybe complete, just your goal is to be like, all right, I want you to come up with a list of how you think your life would be enhanced by creating healthier habits. What do you think the positive effects are going to be? And then what do you think some of the negative effects are going to be? Like, you know, this is going to take time. Tell me how you think that's going to influence your life. Do you think that time is not worth it? Write it down, come back to me in a week. I want to talk about it, right? That's a really good way to kind of, you're focusing on reflection so that you are teaching your client, right? Pre-contemplation, getting somebody to move out of that stage starts with education. So we're really focusing on goals related to that education. They help our clients become better informed about the factors that affect their life. If you got a client in contemplation, they're like, I get it. You know, sitting on the couch is bad for me. Like, okay, cool. They're like, and I'm going to change, but I'm not, give me 6 months, right? To mentally prepare. Okay, cool. right? These are interventions that should focus on creating goals that help identify the benefits specific to them. Okay, so now we've moved out of like teaching them why exercise is good. Now we've moved into teaching them why exercise is good for them specifically, right? So it's very similar, right? But now it's like we aren't just telling them to like think about being healthy as this abstract thought. We're trying to teach them to be healthy specific to their lifestyle. So have the client identify other forms of activity that they could do that are easily achieved. That's a great goal. It's like, I want you to go home and come up with a list of ways that you think you could improve at your activity without ever having to put any effort in. Maybe there's just something small, like, and then you can give them an example. Be like, maybe it's like, I'm going to forever from now on park as far away from the grocery store door as possible, so that I have to walk further and have to carry my groceries back further, right? By the way, this is an example of something that apparently I do naturally that drives all of my friends crazy. So that's something that we could focus on. Or maybe they're going to say, I want you to identify other things. They come back and they're like, well, I guess I could take the stairs at work rather than using the elevator. Great, love it, perfect example. I guess I could take my dog for a walk an extra time per day. It's like, awesome, that's healthy for both of you, right? They're gonna, their goal isn't necessarily to make big changes right now. Their goal is to identify and pull down those barriers that are keeping them from engaging in activity. Now, here's where you're mostly going to see, like, this is where you're actually going to run into clients. This is most of your clients are either going to be in any of these three stages. So preparation, clients are goals related to helping the client prepare for their new lifestyle. So this is somebody who's intending to change. Maybe they've even done like a couple little actions here and there. They've come to the gym a few times. Maybe they've signed up for their membership, but they haven't really been ready to use it yet. So our interventions are specific to focusing on creating goals that help them prepare for this healthy lifestyle. This is why a lot of times I tell my clients, I just want you to show up for the first 4 weeks. I don't want you to be late even once. I don't want you to never cancel on me. That's our goal for the month. It's like, what about losing 10 pounds this month? I'm like, you will lose 10 pounds. Well, 10 pounds is actually a lot. You will lose weight this month if you show up on time every time. That's where I come in, right? This is why we focus on something small rather than something like huge, like actual, which is where like a lot of people kind of go to. They're like, a lot of people jump too far forward. So along with this, have the client set a specific frequency for their workouts. I will start a program in 2 weeks and I will exercise 3 times a week for 2 months. That's great. If you've got them exercising 3 times a week for 2 months, guess what? You've moved them from the preparation stage into action. They haven't maintained it for 6 months yet, so they're not in maintenance, but they have moved from one stage to the next, right? So again, these are goals that help your client prepare for their new healthy lifestyle, or maybe create a habit out of that new healthy lifestyle. Now, if they're in the action stage, they're changing, right? They've moved through all these stages. They've adopted these healthy lifestyles, but they're kind of like wearing it as clothes rather than it becoming like part of them. I don't know if that one worked. But these are interventions that focus on creating goals that really help facilitate these large changes that we may have talked about, right? So now it's like, okay, well, now that you're exercising regularly and you don't have to really think about showing up to the gym, let's start logging all your food. Let's get into food logging. Let's maintain a daily caloric deficit of 500 calories. That's going to result in 1 pound a week. Let's fire it up for the next few months, right? It's habit now. I'm not worried about you canceling on me. I'm not worried about you not showing up. I'm not worried about you falling off your diet. Let's set some heavier, harder to achieve goals that are specific, that are a little more performance-based. And maybe we can even start dipping our toes into the outcome-based goals, right? Lose 1.5 pounds every week for the next 8 weeks, right? Great, specific, very goal. Get 10,000 steps a day, every day. Great, specific, right? And then if you get clients, and once people have been doing this and like, they're an exercise guru, they're doing it all the time, now we can work on that maintenance phase, right? And these are goals related to like maintaining these changes over a long period of time. This is where creating more challenging goals becomes one of the best tools in your tool belt. You know, rather than getting somebody to like, you know, you've worked them up, and now rather than just letting them plateau and coast healthy for the rest of forever, we're going to make them work up again. We're going to raise the effort. We're going to make it harder. We're going to get them to the next level. You know, they wanted to lose a little bit of weight. Now we're going to make them an athlete. They wanted to be an athlete. Now we're going to make them an Olympian, you know? This is where, if they're in the maintenance phase, create a list of all the barriers to exercise. Like, what have they been struggling with? And let's come up with a solution for tearing some of those barriers down. How have they not been perfect over the last few months, right? You know, we have made some amazing progress and we've been successful. Now let's go from successful to being, you know, I don't want to use the word perfect again, incredible, right? Let's get them to the next level. So those are sort of like how you can create, like those are the types of goals that are going to kind of help you when you are, you know, once you've evaluated where somebody is in the stages of change. These are the types of goals that are really effective. Now, one little thing I want to do just before we go, I want to show you guys one more video that is all about the SMART goal system. And this is what's in your regular textbook. I think I closed the wrong one. I totally did. Dang it. The SMART goal system is what you're actually going to find these acronyms. We've touched on all of this already. But I want you guys to kind of get used to like knowing these, because they're going to come back, and I'll have it in a PowerPoint at the very end of this whole course. But let's really quickly understand what I mean when I say SMART goals.
Regardless if it is professional or personal, we all struggle sometimes to achieve our goals. Many times our struggle is not because of a lack of effort, but rather how our goals have been structured. Anytime you set a goal, or if you find yourself struggling while working towards a goal, keep in mind the word SMART. SMART is an acronym that can be used to help evaluate and add structure to your goals. SMART stands for specific, measurable, actionable, relevant, and time-bound. SMART begins with asking yourself the degree to which a goal is specific. This is arguably the most important part of establishing or evaluating a goal. The less specific a goal, the more difficult it is to determine how long the goal should take to complete or how to measure success. Consider the difference between a goal to get healthy versus the goal to lose weight versus the goal to lose 10 pounds. The goal to get healthy is much less specific than a goal to lose 10 pounds. The next question to ask, how is the goal measured? What determines success? Some goals may be best measured by a simple yes or no, such as the goal of climbing to the top of the mountain, while other goals are better measured by using metrics such as the goal to lose 10 pounds. The key to measurement is making sure that in whatever way the goal is measured, it accurately reflects success. For instance, if you do not have access to a scale, then measuring weight loss will be difficult and less accurate. An alternative measure may be to track how many inches you have lost around the waist. But to what extent does this accurately reflect the goal? Without access to a reliable way of measuring weight, we may want to consider buying a scale or restructuring our goal. Actionable is not asking yes or no, but how will the goal be achieved? What is our action plan? Do we have the resources and capabilities required to achieve success? If not, what are we lacking? Well-designed goals provide clarity of action. If the actions required to achieve a goal are unclear, or there are a large number of actions that need to be taken, we should consider breaking down the main goal into manageable, actionable sub-goals. In isolation, any single goal is relevant, but in life, we most often are in the process of pursuing multiple goals. A common issue we face is having too many goals at the same time or pursuing the wrong goals. With this in mind, we need a mechanism to help us monitor our goals to make sure we are pursuing our most relevant goals at any given moment in time. One technique is to place goals in a matrix that looks at effort required versus perceived value of achieving the goal. Not always, but most of the time, we will want to focus our energy on low-effort, high-value goals. Another technique is to use the Pareto principle, also known as the 80-20 rule. Ask, which are the 20% of goals that will provide me with 80% of my return? The last thing we want to make sure is that goals are time-bound. By including a specific date by which a goal should be accomplished, it helps provide incentive and allows us to monitor progress. consider the difference between the goal to lose 10 pounds and the goal to lose 10 pounds in 10 weeks. Simply by including an element of time, we can now calculate how much we should be losing each week, and if after 5 weeks we have only lost 1 pound, we can revisit our action plan. Be wary of any goal that is open-ended, such as the common goal to learn a foreign language. Last, it is important to reinforce that goal setting is not an event. It is an ongoing process of action, evaluation, and revision. It is not about lowering goals or standards to ensure success. It is about recognizing goals are dynamic because life is dynamic. We do not live in a static world. Life happens. A goal that is relevant today may be irrelevant tomorrow. When using SMART, stay flexible and motivated by setting aside time to reevaluate your goals on a regular basis.
Okay. So that's sort of a brief rundown. I mean, obviously, we've mentioned all of that, but that SMART acronym is a great way to just like, did I write the goal the way I should? And then you just go through the SMART acronym and be like, yeah, it's specific. Yes, it's measurable. Yes, it's sustainable. Yes, it's realistic. And yes, it's timely. Oh, yep, I wrote a good goal, right? So that's about all I got for you guys in terms of like lesson stuff. What's up, Irene?
Yeah, you know, on that last bit that you just discussed about goal setting for the action part, is that at the beginning or in the process of working out to get to your goal?
Action stage of change or actionable goals?
Because this is sort of related to the homework we had yesterday about a person who's training for a marathon, and he's already into a few weeks of training. Mm-hmm. And the question was to clarify his like steps in moving forward. He hires a trainer. Yeah. What process, like, where is he at in that?
Definitely, that should be based on what I just heard. And man, I hope that the homework corresponds with this answer. It should be the action phase. Yeah, because he is working out a little bit, right? So he has taken specific actions, but he hasn't maintained it for like a 6-month period.
Okay, so it wouldn't be review. I was so baffled by that because I thought since he's done a few weeks of running, and
I love it. I love where your head's at. Yeah, that's great. He is doing I mean, like, you can review multiple times, but you're going to review frequently throughout until you've maintained something for like a full 6-month period. It isn't really. I mean, I know we've all heard that. What's the adage? It's like it takes 21 days to form like a new habit. It takes about 6 months for that habit to become like part of your being, at least according to the stages of change model. Now, obviously that's a different model, so it's just giving you different numbers. I think both can absolutely be right. You know, this is why this is one of those soft sciences. But you know, he has made some changes, but he hasn't maintained them for 6 months. Somebody who has not made any changes would be somebody in the preparation phase. Once he's taken some steps, that's great, but they're not really part of like it's not maintenance for him. It's not part of his lifestyle. Does that make sense?
Yeah, okay. And so earlier you said action. There's 2 different parts to action. You said action.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was asking, when you say action, do you mean the action stage of change, or sometimes, actually, I just realized it's not even called that in the NASM version. Sometimes SMART goals, they'll flip the word attainable for actionable. So I didn't know if I thought that's what you meant. Yeah, you'll learn. Sometimes you'll hear it both ways. Actually, now I'm trying to remember if the video said it that way. Anyway, sometimes you'll see those, just like you'll see like timely, time-bound, or time-oriented. There's slight differences in how people like define them, but they all mean the same thing. Actionable goals are when you create your goal, you should know specifically what actions you can take to achieve that goal. If your goal is like really abstract and you don't know like what you can do to get there, it's probably not a very good goal. You really shouldn't have to worry too much about attainable goals or actionable goals, if you want to call them that, as long as your goal is already specific. Once it's specific, honestly, that kind of does most of the work for you. Specific, honestly, like once you've done the S part of SMART goals, the rest of it's honestly kind of falls into place. It just happens naturally. But that's what I thought you meant. I didn't know if you meant like actionable goals or if you meant action stage of change. I think that's probably why NASM uses attainable.
Okay, and then about the homework related question, that was related to Oscar, right? The Oscar model.
I'm not sure. I don't have the. No.
He said no.
Hey, hush. Come on. I literally have like 2 minutes left. Relax.
Yeah, I think it was asking about like what stage of Oscar model of change is he? And so
I'm not sure. I'm sorry.
no, but you made it more clear for me than where I was with it. Because I'm like, no, he said review. But I see what you mean.
Yeah, he should be in action.
Okay, it's action.
That's interesting.
So when would review come? Like
why does it
more closer to the goal?
That actually might be a typo.
Oh no, review is like it goes throughout.
Sorry.
Never mind.
No. I'm sorry, I didn't hear any of that. What did you say? I'm sorry, go back. I got real in my own brain.
I'm good on that.
Yeah. What was your question?
No, you already answered it. Review, you said you have it throughout, like during training sessions and stuff, because you're constantly reflecting back with the coach and the client.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, that's so funny. The Oscar model. I mean, that question almost doesn't fit properly, but it's basically you. It's basically you going through like the coaching process. That's not really the stages of change. That's the flow of a coaching session. You're asking yourself, like review is like when you're going through a coaching session, the review is the section where you as a coach say, here's how we are going to review progress. Every 3 weeks, we're going to check in and we're going to do a new weigh-in. That's what review is, rather than somebody who's exercising a few times a week.
Okay. Sorry, I'm like drilling on this one question, but choices and consequences was one of the options. When does that part?
Definitely not in the stages of, that has nothing to do with the stages of change. That's why that question's kind of weird. I gotta look at that. I think they might have mixed up their models in that question. Choices and consequences is part of a coach's flowing session. And it's part of like one of the things that you want to achieve as a coach. And it's where when you are reviewing like what the coaching process is, you are going to say, okay, so if we are going to make these specific choices because these specific choices result in these types of consequences. And so like consequences are a good thing in this point. I know we often use the word consequence when it means a bad thing, but it's like if you eat healthy, if you reduce your calories by 500 a day, we understand that you should lose about 1 pound a week, right? Which means if you make other choices that do not result in you creating a 500 calorie deficit, you will have these consequences instead, which means your weight will plateau or you'll gain weight, right? Like that's what choice and consequences is. It's like you as the coach are laying out a very clear picture for your client of what the consequences of their actions are. Does that make sense? It has nothing to do with the stages of change. That's why that's why I'm really, really thrown off by that. I don't know why it says Oscar stages of change. It's to say Oscar model. The Oscar model is a coaching model. It's like the 5 main things you want to do as a coach.
Right, just kind of like SMART, right? With
yeah, it's a model to SMART is a model that allows you to create an effective goal. Oscar is a model that allows you as a coach to do specific things, right? You want to ask your client what their desired outcome is. You want to evaluate what their current situation is, lay out their choices and consequences, their actions, and what that carries out. like what your role as the coach is, what their role as the client is, and then review like, you know, how reviewing is reviewing everything you just talked about, but also reviewing like, okay, how is it you and I are going to be in touch? What am I evaluating? Like as your coach, I'm going to take your weight and measurements and body fat percent, you know, like things like that. And we're going to do it every 3 weeks. That's an example of review.
Awesome. I'm good.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to take a look at that and maybe pop an email over to NASM. I've never noticed that question. I've never noticed that it said Oscar there before. I've never really seen that. I mean, it's been in there forever. I haven't changed any of these questions in years, but I've never noticed that it says Oscar stages of change. It should say Oscar model or stages of change. Those are separate things. Really quickly before I lose anybody, tomorrow we are going to meet in person. So we're going to do, we are going to not have a virtual lecture tomorrow. We are going to instead meet in person at Van Nuys Memorial Park. I will be sending an email out later today with all the details. In the email, I'm going to put the address of the parking lot. So don't look at the name and then Google the name and then go to the name, because then it'll just take you to the park's like mailing address. Go to the address that I put in the email. Go to that address. That's going to take you right to where we want to go. We're going to meet and we're going to go through a training session. I'm going to take you guys through Nicholas, Raul, this will be your first time seeing sort of what a NASM sort of workout looks like when it flows. But Irene, Robert, you guys have seen this before, but now you're going to kind of get to practice it. So we're just going to work our way through a warm-up, a movement prep. We'll do some SIQ because it's fun. You don't actually do it that often, but we are going to do it because it's a blast. Then we'll go through some resistance training, and then we'll do a cool down. And we will get to see like what that looks like in different levels and different phases and stuff. So that's the plan. It'll be at 9 a.m. tomorrow, and there will also be another one at 6 p.m. tomorrow. Bring water and bring sunscreen. And if you don't want to get on the ground, bring a yoga mat if you've got one, or a towel, you know. But other than that, the rest of it we'll take care of. All right, guys, I'm gonna let everybody go. I will see all y'all tomorrow. Have a great day.